What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Oh, we have Brendan in San Francisco's back. Aloha, what's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I was just going to comment on the living situation here in the Bay Area. I've discovered that a lot of the properties in San Francisco are being bought up by Chinese investors to protect their money from whatever's happening in their homeland. A lot of these units are sitting empty just for investment purposes. Also, they do get green cards with the purchase of their properties. Other thing, people are supplementing their living by Airbnb-ing out their units, and that's creating a shortage of housing here as well and driving up the rents. And I've actually seen where students that are here are doing escort service to kind of supplement their income. Mm-hmm. Then, of course, we've got people living in their cars by Golden Gate Park. So it's kind of a mess over here, people just trying to stay above water. But there's a guy that's been bragging on the internet how he's got some people subletting his unit while he's living in Tahiti 3 months out of the year, and finally they cracked down on that. But, you know, there's a bunch of units sitting here empty while we've got people living on the streets. It's a mess.
Yeah, it is, and we're seeing it all across the country. The new image of America are a bunch of homeless people camped out in front of boarded-up homes, and it shouldn't be that way. Yeah,
it's kind of sad. I mean, in '89 we had the earthquake here, and it scared the jeepers out of a lot of people, and they actually left the city and went back to wherever they're from, and it was kind of nice because the city kind of went back to normal, and I'm expecting another reset if we have a big quake here, which we're well overdue. A lot of these buildings are just piled on top of each other, and they're like matchsticks waiting to go up in flames again. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Well, I wouldn't want to wish that on anybody, but it's obviously, if you live in California, there's a risk of quakes, and apparently scientists are getting very nervous about that Cascadia fault letting go, because that one is way, way overdue. But again, the way the rules are set up to allow Chinese investors to buy up the properties and just sit on them, again, it's good for business. It's not good for the people. And I think people everywhere are just reaching the breaking point of so much abuse that we are suffering at the hands of this corporatocracy, if you will.
Yeah, a side note on the Chinese investors, I understand that there's actually more Chinese illegal immigration into California than from Mexico, which is kind of an interesting side note that no one really thinks about.
Well, I was unaware of that figure. I'm kind of wondering how the Chinese managed to sneak in. I mean, it's not like they can walk across the border. Or maybe they do. They sail into Mexico and come north. I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah, I actually was hanging out at the Golden Gate Bridge one night with some friends drinking beer when I was a teenager, and literally, I'm not making this up, we're sitting there just relaxing, and all of a sudden, coming up from the beach, bunches of Asian folks scrambling up the hillside, and they must have been dropped off on a small dinghy off from the coast, and we've got all the shipping containers that come in through the Golden Gate from China. So I know there's a smuggling route there. It's just another, illegal or black market. I think we talked about that before, where it's like drugs, guns, people. There's all kinds of smuggling going on, and people are just cargo. And it's horrific, the conditions that those folks come over in these containers and in their own feces and things. It's just really horrible what's going on.
It really is, and it is a shame, but it's a real mess out there. I don't, and maybe one of the reasons they're moving to a new world war is to deliberately thin out the human population, because the 30 million that the U.S. government has killed since the end of World War II is just a small dent in the problem, and that's certainly something a world war can do, especially with these biological weapons, is thin out the population.
Yeah, we're witnessing. I mean, I'm not a big religious guy, but we're witnessing like biblical kind of end times events. We're living in it, so I guess it's hard to recognize the forest for the trees or whatnot. I mean, we are literally in the middle of this thing, and it's kicked off. Like you keep saying, we are in World War III. We're just waiting for that big bang, and you know, it's funny that we're so awake, a lot of us are awake, that they're probably scared to fail at another false flag, or maybe they don't even care anymore, but something's going to kick off here anytime soon.
Yeah, I think they're going through the motions. To them, it's just theater, just like the phony rigged elections. Yeah, at this point, it almost seems like they no longer care if people are aware of what they're doing. I mean, the way they stole the election from Le Pen was just incredibly obvious. And a listener reminded me back when they were talking about, before the French elections got underway, we had a caller into the show that said it's impossible to rig a French election because they used those paper ballots. Well, they found a way to do it. And
yeah, and why would a torn ballot be nullified? That makes no sense at all.
Yeah, but that is the law.
Mike,
that is the law.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. People are talking about 9/11. I just want to mention I'm a licensed elevator mechanic, and I know there was an elevator company that had the contract for the Twin Towers, and it was this small company that came out of nowhere. And you would never give a big contract like that to a small outfit. And then they disappeared after the 9/11 event. So there's one more layer. If you're going to take down a building, you have complete access to the core through the elevator shafts, and
Yeah.
you can work off of the car tops. You can operate the elevator from the top of the car, and that's your core strength of a building. Just want to, that was it. Just a little side note there. Thanks, Mike.
I was unaware of that, but it would make sense that, again, the cutter charges that are seen in the photographs of the wreckage are of that core assembly, because the building was built with a strong core and the floors were cantilevered out. And very little of the load was actually carried by those outside walls. I
love it. Time Magazine cover. It's beautiful. They shot themselves in the foot. There's a cover photo with the shaved charge beam. I love it. Thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. We're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. So we're talking about the economy here. And as I keep telling you, forget what the corporate media is telling you or the government is telling you about how wonderful the economy is and we're in a recovery and everybody ought to be happy, and if you're going hungry and you're without a job, it's all your fault, really. But I think a good example of just how bad things are in this country can be found in Baltimore. And there's a very telling story over at Zero Hedge, basically talking about how it wasn't that long ago when Baltimore was considered one of our model cities. It was a show place, and now here we are with buildings closed everywhere, abandoned buildings, drug addicts just lying in the streets, and it's just a rotting, decaying shell of the metropolis it used to be, and we're seeing that all over the country. Detroit, Chicago. We are a nation in decline. We're being strangled to death by the wartime economy. And we're going to lose this war. Okay, let's take some more phone calls. Michael in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha. Mike, first of all, I want to say God bless you. I stopped listening to Alex Jones and all those other alt-writers. They're full of, hogwash. I just want to talk about 9/11 really quick. And, Mike, it's the Jews, bro. It's absolutely the Jews.
Okay.
They control everything.
All right. There's a rule that we have here on this show. If you want to criticize an individual or a government, that's fine. But sweeping generalizations about the Jews this, the blacks that, the Hispanics that, we don't go there. As far as we can tell, yes, Mossad may have been involved along with the Bush administration. But we don't make these sweeping things about, okay, that's the rules.
Okay.
Okay.
Michael, Larry Silverstein, he's a Jew. I mean, a majority of them are Jews. The New World Order is Jewish, no?
Okay, hang on. Thank you very much. If you want to talk about Larry Silverstein, yes. Fine. Them's the rules. All right, James in Japan, Ohio gozaimasu, o genki desu ka?
Ohio gozaimasu, Michael. Hey, Mike, you had a really cool caller the other day. He was from, like, Ukraine. No, he lived in Ukraine.
Yes.
But he's not living there anymore. And I really enjoyed that call, and I really hope that guy calls in a lot in your show again because he was really fascinating.
He had a lot of good information.
Yeah, he had a great information. This is like the interaction between you two was like really fascinating, and I just found it. I just really enjoyed it, and I just hope whoever the hell he is, he calls back again to your show because I think you really added a lot of value to it.
Okay, well, thank you. Hopefully he's listening.
Yeah, I hope so. Hey, Mike, as far as Colbert, yeah, I don't like what he says either, but I'm a great believer in free speech. You know, I think he should say whatever the hell he wants, but put some kind of thing on his show like parental guidance up to 17 years old or something like that. But
well, let me back up here. Let me back up here a little bit because a lot of people have a misconception about our right to freedom of speech, and there is a reasonable limit in that the First Amendment is there to protect the truth from those in power who are afraid of the truth. The First Amendment was never intended to protect lies and liars. And Colbert knowingly made inaccurate statements, and then he made it personal with that homophobic comment, and that basically indicated malice was at work. And so I agree with those who say Colbert is at legal jeopardy from what he did. And again, if you're going to have freedom of speech, along with that comes the responsibility that you will think about what you're going to say very carefully before you say it.
Yeah, have some responsibility before you say stuff. I believe that. Hey, as far as fans, I think they voted just to like eradicate their own people. I don't know, like how. I don't even know what is going through these people's heads.
Greed, unbridled greed, partisanship, turf wars. Like I said earlier in the show, our Congress is so caught up in all this partisan bickering, they certainly cannot be doing their actual job, and that's another reason this nation is descending into chaos.
And lastly, I'm going back to Russia next week.
Okay.
Next time, I'll try and get a souvenir for the lovely lady Claire. I didn't think she'd like the same souvenir I gave you, so I have to get something more feminine. But I've got to tell you, Russia's a nice place, man. Like, I was warned not to go on the back streets and stuff in Vladivostok, but...
well, you'd get that same warning here in Honolulu.
Yeah, everywhere. Pretty much everywhere. But, yeah, I'll get something nice for Claire. And this time I'm running like a loft in there. It's like only $500 a month, and it has like everything, kitchen and washer, dryer, internet. So, yeah, I'll send some for the lady Claire this time. And I don't know, I'm not good at buying stuff for women, but I'm going to give it a shot. But that's it. And
right.
Hope you have a good day, Mike.
Well, if it'll make you feel any better, she has been wearing that T-shirt.
All right, man.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Steve in California. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, you mentioned the retail stocks plummeting today, and then I just had to check over on dryships.com, and that's where I check for the Baltic Dry Index every day usually. And, of course, that number is up by 7 points, so we know this number has also been tweaked quite a bit, too, along with the plunge protection and quantitative easing for the markets. This is another number we can't actually rely on, but we should be able to, but we can't. They're tweaking this number, too. If the stocks are plummeting, and we're showing the Baltic Dry Index is at 1012, which is a rise of 7 points, it doesn't kind of go with the 4.4% unemployment, wouldn't you say?
Well, it all depends. I mean, if there's a sudden shipment in the raw materials needed to produce explosives and gun propellant, obviously that sector of the economy is doing very, very well, and they need to import the raw materials. So I'm not ready to just say the number is being tinkered with. What I want to see is, what kinds of cargoes are accounting for that 7-point rise.
Okay, fair enough. Hey, another thing I wanted to quickly talk about it was you said the UK leaving the Brexit and leaving the European Union and voting for Brexit. If somebody wanted to keep you on the same system, keep you indebted, how would they go about keeping the UK under the old European Union? Probably carry out some false flags, probably get the country involved in some kind of conflict where they could not leave. Do you think it's a possibility we might be seeing more false flags in the UK?
We could, but again, right now it looks like, first of all, Brussels keeps putting ever more unrealistic demands on Great Britain to leave. They're literally charging them a divorce payment, if you will. And again, it looks like the Remainers are going to try and hijack that election in June to try and get rid of the Brexiteers and basically deal with that. Try and get a new vote through Parliament with a pro-Remain Parliament and just say, it's all over, no more Brexit.
Yeah, I see that actually to be very realistic happening. I really do. I don't think that they will actually escape. I think they'll be staying on the European Union. I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't care what the people say. The power brokers have made the decision, and they are going to tweak this somehow, some way.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean, the New World Order, the globalists, are so close to their dream of a single planet with a single golden throne and a single private central bank. At this point, they're not going to quit. They're not going to pull back.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch to Charlie in Los Angeles. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. How you doing today?
Doing okay.
Hey, I got a question for you. Well, not a question. First of all, we know that the Jewish community gets all upset anytime you insult them about anything, whether it's the Holocaust or whatever. But then why in Las Vegas, where that's basically the Jewish community that built that town, uses Krupp Siemens elevator service?
Okay.
We know that Alfred Krupp and Siemens were the biggest boosters of Hitler, and I always wondered why that was when I would see these Krupp Siemens vans and all these hotel parking lots servicing the elevators. Just kind of how does that happen situation? I mean, I'm just thinking,
Well, I mean,
it's not Otis Elevator.
Well, there's Otis as well. We don't know what was in which company got the contract for the World Trade Towers. But this far after World War II, I mean, the reasonable person is going to say, okay, yeah, we got to stop carrying a grudge. BMW, during World War II, they were manufacturing aircraft engines for the German fighters, and yet today people don't say we're not going to buy BMWs because they're linked back to the Nazis. And well, even when I was young, how popular the Volkswagen Beetle was, and that was one of the signature accomplishments of the Nazi government, a people's car. Everybody could afford one of these cars, and they were very simple, very easy to maintain, and I loved my Beetle.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I mean, I just found, it's like there's plenty of elevator companies, Otis, and, then you see Krupp Siemens, and I used to talk to the Krupp Siemens employees who were on my table, and some of those people were Jewish. And I just could never figure out how could that happen, considering, Alfred Krupp and Siemens were, if you look in any history books, were the biggest villains behind Hitler.
Again, that was so long ago. I think probably a lot of people just don't care anymore. A lot of people just don't care anymore.
No, but so was the Holocaust. Holocaust was so long ago, too.
Yeah, and I'm ready to forget that as well, but, obviously there's a political agenda that can take advantage of that, and so they're going to keep running it up. Anyway, listen, Charlie, we're coming up now on a commercial break, and I'm going to have to let you go, and we'll be back after these few words from our sponsor. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now then, interesting little story here. Somebody's actually been doing a study of all these refugees pouring into Europe, and they've discovered only 13% of them are from Syria. And this completely undermines the entire claim that the borders must be open to take in these war refugees. Only 13% of them are from Syria, and we don't know what percentage of those are actually fleeing the war as opposed to looking for a better place to live. But as they pour on in and pour on in and pour on in, Europe is not such a great place to live as it used to be. It's all being pulled down to the lowest common denominator. Now, here in the United States of America, political correctness is starting to get a little bit dizzy, if you were. At the American University in Washington, D.C., a group of black student demonstrators protested, demanding a sanctuary for people of color, as well as an extension on their final exams in response to an alleged hate crime, and they got it. They now have a blacks-only area at the Bridge Cafe. Now, can you imagine what would happen if somebody said, we want a whites-only area at any place on the campus, the Bridge Cafe, anywhere else. We want a whites-only area. Oh, it's racist, it's this, it's that, it's Jim Crow, it's the KKK. Now, Tommy Curry is a professor at Texas A&M. He teaches radical black philosophies, and he just demonstrated how radical it is because he's come on out saying it's time that black people should talk openly about murdering white people. And in an interview he said the murder of white people may be necessary for black liberation. Said that white people need to fear blacks so much they believe death could come for them at any moment. That's actually pretty radical out there. Is this what colleges and universities have turned into? It's a little bit out there. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Wes in Idaho, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Michael, who was it that said to determine who rules you, who can you not criticize?
Well, it's attributed to Voltaire, but they don't think it was really him. But the quote basically goes to learn who rules over you, learn who you may not criticize.
Who said it then?
They're not sure. It's attributed to Voltaire, but they're not sure that it was really him.
Do you think that's a true statement then?
Yeah, very much so. I think it very much is a true statement.
I just got 5 new books today by R. Vincent Burt. Have you read this book? It's called It's the Jews, Stupid, Who and What Are the Evil Lives.
Wes.
Oh, we can't. Oh, that's right. We can't criticize them.
No. We can't use generalizations. I mean, if you want to talk about Netanyahu, that's fine. You want to talk about Silverstein, that's fine. But I don't want to get into this other stuff. And it doesn't matter whether it's Jewish or black or Hispanic, okay? Because otherwise we're down in that same area as that Texas A&M professor talking about all whites this and all whites that. Okay? We don't want to go down that path of gross generalizations. If you want to criticize an individual or a government, that is what this program is for. So, anyway, now, down in Houston, Texas, there's been an interesting story involving a drive-by shooting. Apparently, a homeowner in his home was the target of 3 criminals in a drive-by shooting that drove by the front of his house, firing into his house over 40 times, not hitting the homeowner. The homeowner responded, firing back and shooting all 3 suspects, killing 2, using an AR-15. So anybody who's out there among the gun grabbers saying you don't need an AR-15 to defend your home, this is the counterexample right there. Because had he been using a shotgun, probably would have had no effect at that range. Same thing with a handgun. This is a classic case of allowing the American people to have the same arms as the criminals. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're going to talk about computers and software and malware. And the latest one coming on out, there is a phishing, smishing scam, actually, that's circulating this week. And basically what it is you will get a text message that appears to be from NatWest Bank asking you to verify your account details. You click on the link. It takes you to what looks like NatWest's website. And, of course, when you type in your banking details, scammers get access to all of your money. And it is rather amazing to see the U.S. government go on about the threat of terrorism and the threat of this and the threat of that. The biggest threat to the American people right now is this out-of-control tsunami of cybercrime, and nobody seems interested in dealing with that. Now, interesting story out of Journal Neo, the imperative of replacing Google and Facebook. And it's talking about how other nations around the world are now telling their own domestic populations to find alternatives to Google and Facebook because of the very obvious pro-America propagandizing and filtering going on in both of those social media platforms. And so we're starting to see the rise of locally produced search engines and social media sharing platforms. We have some here in the U.S. like Scene Life and Gab and VK and so forth that are coming on, and they're starting to capture a larger and larger share of the market. And now we have governments around the world that are telling their own populations, do not use Google and Facebook because you're going to be getting information that the government of the United States of America wants you to see, and you will not get the information the government of the United States of America does not want you to see. Now, apparently over at New York University, they had a little bit of a whoopsie. This was reported over in The Intercept. Apparently one of the programs they have on the campus involves encryption. It's a government contract, and it is supposedly a new generation of supercomputer-enabled code-breaking systems to go after mathematically based codes, which are still very much at the heart of public key cryptography. And apparently somebody left all this code, the source code, for this software exposed to the entire Internet. And they have no way of knowing if somebody's already copied it off. Apparently the project was called Windsor Green, and it's a system designed to excel at the sort of complex mathematics that underlies modern encryption. And so that may now be out there as well. Now, the encryption that I came up with in my challenges to the NSA was not mathematically based, it was logically based. The mathematic-based encryption, there's always a weakness in that it is mathematically based. And if you can figure out the math, you can figure out the code. But one of these days I'll get around to coming up with a public key version of the 10,000 Monkeys code. Over in Great Britain, their largest union for school teachers is now boycotting Hewlett-Packard computers over the company's role in the Israeli occupation. More than 21,000 people in Great Britain have also signed a pledge to boycott the U.S. headquartered firm. And they're saying it's a gesture of solidarity with the Palestinian people. They're not going to be buying Hewlett-Packard equipment. Now, Hewlett-Packard under Carly Fiorina left a bad taste in my mouth, so I tend not to buy their stuff anyway, but this will send a message. Speaking of HP, apparently an audio driver installed on some Hewlett-Packard laptops was found to have a keylogger built into it. Records all the user's keystrokes and saves the information to a local file accessible to anyone or any third-party software or malware that knows where to look. Swiss cybersecurity firm Mod0 discovered the keylogger on April 28th, made the findings public today. The question is this the audio driver supplied by Hewlett-Packard on the laptop, or is it an aftermarket product? It sounds to me like it's inherent to the Hewlett-Packard. And we've been hearing from all kinds of places where tablets and smartphones and laptops are being sold with malware already in them at the point of sale. How much of this is criminal activity versus how much of this is government snooping on you? We don't know. But it is rather alarming that our own appliances are being weaponized against us. and against our right to privacy. Now, over the years, I have bashed Microsoft quite a bit, and sometimes they did, in fact, really deserve it. But they've done something really wonderful, and so this is where we get to come on back and say, way to go, Microsoft. They have developed a watch that vibrates, that alleviates hand tremors of people who have Parkinson's disease. It's called the Emma watch, named after the Parkinson's sufferer it was designed for, and it was showcased at Microsoft's Build 2017 conference in Seattle. And it's still a prototype, but I can imagine they're probably going to sell a lot of these things. It sends tiny vibrations into the wearer's wrist that disrupt this feedback loop between the brain and the hand that causes the tremors. And this is a wonderful technology, and it reminds me about a system that was developed quite a while ago to deal with people who stammer. And it was simply a microphone and a headset. And when other people were talking around you, you heard them just fine. But when you were talking, the system would play white noise into your ear, so you couldn't hear your own voice. And that would stop people from stammering, because their brain was caught in a loop between speaking and listening to themselves speak, and that was what was causing the stammering. So this appears to be a technique that could have a wider range of applications than previously thought. But again, when Microsoft does it right, they do it right. This is an absolutely amazing development, and I certainly hope it will be made available to Parkinson's sufferers very, very soon. Now, speaking of watches, on the other side, apparently the Apple Watch has a bit of a problem. There is a function called Hold to Auto Call, and by default it's set to 911. And apparently people, when they lean on the button, they're accidentally calling 911, and apparently it resulted in 130,000 erroneous, mistaken calls to 911 last year. Now, those 911 switchboards are not infinite, and if they're dealing with somebody who's more or less finger dialed them or butt dialed them, then the line may be busy for somebody who's got a real emergency. Fortunately, it is possible to turn the hold to auto call function off or to have it on a different number. But if you have an Apple Watch, you might want to think about either shutting it off or have the auto call directed to a different number, like your home number or your broker or something like that. But that's something you may want to look out for. Sometimes they make the devices just a little too clever. Now, there is a little bit of good news out here. Apparently, Corboom Communications was a cold calling firm, and they were calling people sometimes at night to see if they were eligible for road accident or PPI compensation and so forth. And it breached privacy laws by calling people without their consent. This is in Great Britain. And they got hit with a record £400,000 fine by the Information Commissioner's Office for making almost 100 million nuisance calls. And it put the company into bankruptcy. And boy, would I like to see a lot of that here in the United States, because of all the telemarketer calls from all these companies who, one way or the other, ignore or get around the do not call list. And a lot of these American call center companies, they'll have the actual call center outside the United States, so that technically they're not controlled by the do not call list. And then they'll call back in and they'll sell you insurance or whatever. And it really is very angering that the do not call list is not actually being enforced. And it really ought to be, especially for people who are on a metered cell phone service. These telemarketing calls are adding to your bill. Now, apparently there is another lawsuit cranking on up over the Samsung Galaxy Note 7, S7, and the S7 Edge, and apparently the Edge has also developed a security hole as well, where apparently a rather large number of these lithium batteries are overheating and catching fire and causing damage and injury. And I think this does exceed the limitations of indemnification. One thing when it simply stops working, but when it's setting fire to your home, that's something else entirely. Now, you're probably wondering what's been going on over at the Dakota access pipeline ever since the water defenders were driven off and the pipeline was allowed to be completed, even though there were apparently some deficiencies in the right-of-way. But it's an oil company, and the oil companies will rule. And so the Standing Rock Sioux tribe have issued a statement basically saying that even though the Dakota Access Pipeline is not carrying anywhere near its planned capacity, they are already finding leaks all the way along the pipeline, getting into the water supply on which 17 million people are dependent, which was exactly the issue that they were raising over the placement of this pipeline across their tribal land. All right, let's talk about Hanford. The official word from Hanford is there was no radiation leak. We are now starting to hear from other parties around the area that, yes, there was a radiation release. Nobody's saying how much. And apparently Tuesday, the Emergency Operations Center was activated to basically deal with the aftermath of this. And again, as we reported yesterday, the tunnel that collapsed had a history of issues. They were warned that these tunnels were not safe. They needed to be reinforced, and nothing was done because the money needs to go for bombs and bullets. So far, the entire repair has consisted of just pouring dirt into the hole, which absolutely is not a seal against escaping radioisotopes. But we seem to be in this era where every time there's one of these disasters, they don't solve it, they just make it look like it's gone away. When the Deepwater Horizon blew up in the Gulf of Mexico, they poured all this highly toxic Corexit on the oil. It was called a dispersant. It's nothing of the kind. It causes the oil molecules to rearrange so it becomes denser than water and sinks to the bottom. All that oil that you used to see on the top of the Gulf of Mexico is now on the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, where all the crabs and flounders and other bottom-feeding fish are being contaminated by it. Same thing here at Hanford. Just pour dirt on it, pretend it wasn't a problem. So let's talk about human-caused global warming. Apparently, the surprise snow that we had last month actually increased the mountain snowpack over in Wyoming. And they're saying the ski resorts are already closed for the season, but people were heading up into the mountains for any place they could find. And there was snowing and snowboarding going on. Winter's back, as it were. Over in Utah, the Department of Transportation crews are still trying to cut through the deep snow to get those mountain passes open. And apparently it is slow going over there. Back on the 8th, Monday, they had a freak hailstorm in Denver. Had these golf ball-sized hailstones coming on down. And it piled up so deep, some cars couldn't be moved. I mean, it was up around the cars. They were practically buried. Apparently, last night, the national cold record in Latvia was broken. They've set a new all-time cold weather record for this day of the year for the entire country. And, of course, as you know, Barack Obama got a huge chunk of cash traveling to Milan, Italy, for a climate change conference. And as we have seen with all these champions of the environment, he flew in a private jet and then went from the airport into the venue for the conference in a 14-car convoy. Talk about climate change, human-caused global. There is a warning out that, and let me back up here and preface this. Yesterday we were talking about how there was a problem with the runoff from pharmaceutical companies, the untreated waste materials pouring into the water supply included vast amounts of antibiotics, and as a result, we're starting to see life forms evolve antibiotic resistance in the wild. So now, according to the story out of Natural News, there is a superbug fungus starting to invade U.S. hospitals in New York and New Jersey. And none of the existing drugs have any effect against this fungus. It would be nice if they would nod to the homeopathic people and try oregano oil, which is really good against fungus. But it is a nasty situation. The more we treat illnesses with these synthetic chemicals, the more these pathogens are going to evolve to tolerate them. We're already seeing it with the glyphosate, Roundup. The pests and the weeds that glyphosate was supposed to kill, they're developing their own glyphosate resistance. So the farmers are stuck with the GMO seeds, and they're having to go back to using traditional chemical pesticides to control the weeds on their farm. Now, over at the Health Resources and Services Administration, they have released the list of payouts for the Vaccine Injury Court for U.S. fiscal year 2017, which just ended, and they paid out $142 million. And remember, the Vaccine Court is biased in favor of the vaccine manufacturers. And so they had enough people come on in with absolute proof of vaccine damage. They paid out $142 million. Now, the Boston Herald has gone on the warpath, trying to dehumanize parents concerned about vaccine safety, and actually going as far as to say that anti-vaccine speech ought to be a hanging offense. Because measles are bad, measles can kill. Actually, measles has only killed one person in the last half century, and that person had just had the measles vaccine. The measles vaccine kills 10 times as many people, counting that one. But it's all about pushing product, getting you to buy things you may not need, may not want. And again, we don't have the money in the first place. So they're just going to flog us harder. All right, we're going to be back with the last segment of our program after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about medical issues and vaccinations. And apparently over in Sweden, their parliament has decided that forced vaccinations violate the constitutional rights of the Swedish people. And considering how progressive and liberal Sweden has become, this sends a very strong signal. They recognize that there is a fundamental right to decide what goes in your body. That is your right, not the government's right, not the school's right, your right to decide. All right, we're going to take one more phone call. Nico in Southern California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, nui nui. I had posted an article this morning on the website regarding a study that was done, homeschooled kids versus non-homeschooled kids with regard to vaccines and illness. Did you see that?
Yeah, and we posted it ourselves a couple of days ago, and basically it said that overall vaccinated children are a lot less healthy. They're more prone to all kinds of illnesses. Again, we have that lawsuit against Merck for the shingles vaccine, which is causing shingles in the people. And there's this horrific story that was over in Natural News where apparently an FDA-approved anti-seizure medication was given to this 26-year-old graduate student, and it caused her skin to literally melt. And I saw the before and after pictures, and it's horrific. And apparently it happened to other people, and this woman has joined a lot of people who are suing GlaxoSmithKline for millions of dollars in medical costs over this horrifying damage. And remember, the FDA approved this medication.
Well, it's my understanding that the laws were changed in the last 5-10 years where the FDA can be paid to speed through the approval of certain medicines.
Well, it's not just that. It's the fact that the FDA doesn't do its own tests anymore. It relies on the testing information provided by the pharmaceutical manufacturer.
Well, yeah, that's kind of like relying on CrowdStrike to take a look at Hillary's theater. It's all it's all crooked. But yeah, this article that looking at the rough numbers, 30 times as likely for vaccinated children to have allergies, 22 times as likely for them to require allergy medication, 4 times as likely to have early learning disabilities, 300 times more likely to have ADHD. The article that I posted actually has a link to the study itself if you want to look at the numbers.
Okay, well, the numbers are horrific here, and of course all of them are conditions that lead to the sale of more medications and treatments. It's money, 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 money.
Hey, before I go, what is your shirt size? I know, you and I made that shirt that's the, all I got was this lousy T-shirt, and I wanted to send one to you.
Well, I'm a large, and I already got one through the Cafe Press store. And by the way, times for a little personal gloat here. As you know, I've been trying to lose weight for a couple of years. I hit 199 this morning. I'm down under 200, and I started at 285 when I started the diet. So, huzzah, huzzah, huzzah. I'm going to order a big pizza to celebrate. There's the music. It's time for us to get on out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. We'll be back tomorrow, Friday, with the lovely Lady Claire here on Republic Broadcasting. Until then, take what you learn, share it with everybody. We need to get the word on out. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. Aloha, America.